They didn't reject you, they disappeared. And there's a difference so profound that understanding it will change how you see every relationship that's ever hurt you. You've been calling it rejection, haven't you? Telling yourself you weren't good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, worth choosing. But what if I told you that their sudden silence, their vanishing act, their ability to become a ghost while you're still breathing and bleeding, what if that wasn't about your worth at all? What if their disappearance was actually about control? What if it was about their desperate need to stay in the driver's seat of their own emotional chaos? If this sounds like I'm reading your mind, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what hurts most about being left without explanation. I read every single comment, and your truth might be exactly what someone scrolling at 2 a.m. needs to hear today. Here's what really happened. They disappeared because staying meant losing control. And for someone who operates from emotional avoidance, control is oxygen. Control is survival. Control is the only thing standing between them and the terror of being truly known, truly seen, truly vulnerable. When you started getting close, something shifted inside them. When you started asking for consistency, for presence, for the basic human decency of communication, that's when their nervous system screamed danger. That's when they realized you weren't just entertainment, just a distraction from their own emptiness. You were asking them to be real, to be present, to be human, and they couldn't handle it. John Bowlby's attachment theory reveals something devastating about the human condition. Some people learned early that emotional intimacy equals entrapment, that being close to someone means being trapped, suffocated, consumed. That vulnerability is a weakness that will be weaponized against them. So they perfect the art of the disappearing act. They become masters of emotional hit and run. They learn to love at a distance and leave when things get too close for comfort. They don't reject you. They reject the vulnerability that real connection demands. They ghost because it's easier than admitting they're terrified. Terrified of being seen behind the mask. Terrified of staying when things get messy. Terrified of being human in a world that demands authenticity. You were chasing someone who was running from themselves, someone who was sprinting away from their own capacity for love. Think about it for a moment. Really think about it. A person who truly doesn't want you doesn't need to disappear like a coward in the night. They can simply say no. They can have an adult conversation. They can treat you like a human being deserving of basic respect and honesty. They can look you in the eye and tell you the truth even if it hurts. But disappearing, vanishing without a trace, that's what people do when they want to avoid the discomfort of honesty. When they want to maintain the illusion of being the good person while treating you like you don't exist. When they want to keep control of the narrative without giving you a voice in your own story. When they want to be the victim of their own choices. The truth cuts deeper than you think, and it's more liberating than you can imagine. They disappeared because you mattered too much. You represented everything they're not ready to face. Commitment, consistency, emotional maturity, growth. Real intimacy. You represented the kind of love that asks you to show up even when it's inconvenient, even when you're scared, even when your past is screaming at you to run. And that terrified them to their core. You represented growth, and growth is terrifying for someone who's built their entire identity around staying small and safe and hidden. You represented the possibility of something real, something lasting, something that requires them to be consistent. And real is dangerous for someone who's spent their life hiding behind masks, behind walls, behind the safety of never being fully known. Here's what Bowlby understood that most people miss. When we can't form secure attachments early in life, we develop survival strategies to avoid the pain of abandonment. And one of the most effective strategies: leave before you can be left, disappear before you can be rejected, control the abandonment by being the one who does it. Ghost before you can be ghosted. It's not about you. It never was about you. Their disappearance wasn't about you not being enough. It was about them not being brave enough to stay when love got real. Here's the reframe that will set you free, that will change everything. Their disappearance wasn't a verdict on your value, it was a confession of their limitations. It wasn't a statement about your worth. It was a declaration of their fear. It wasn't about your failure to be chosen. It was about their failure to choose bravely. When someone ghosts you, they're not saying you're not enough. They're saying, I'm not brave enough to stay when things get real, when emotions get complicated, when love requires me to grow. They're not saying you don't matter. They're saying, I don't know how to matter to anyone because I've never learned to stay for anything difficult, anything that requires real presence. The person who disappears is the same person who will disappear on their dreams when they get challenging, their commitments when they get inconvenient, their own growth when it gets uncomfortable, their own healing when it requires them to face their wounds. You weren't rejected by someone worthy of your energy, your time, your tears. You were spared from someone who hasn't learned the most basic skill of being human, staying present when presence gets difficult. And here's what makes this story beautiful, what makes your pain sacred. You stayed. While they were perfecting the art of vanishing, you were learning the courage to remain present, even in pain. While they chose the coward's exit, you chose to feel everything and still believe in connection. While they ran from vulnerability like it was poison, you ran toward it like it was medicine. That makes you brave. That makes you real. That makes you someone worth knowing, worth choosing, worth staying for. The avoidant person lives in a prison of their own making. They trade connection for control. They trade love for safety. They trade being known for being comfortable. They trade intimacy for independence. And in the end, they're the loneliest people on earth because they've convinced themselves that being close to someone is dangerous, that being loved means being trapped. You don't want that life. You don't want to love someone who's allergic to being loved back. You don't want to invest your heart in someone who sees your investment as suffocation. But here's the part that will change everything for you. The right person for you doesn't disappear when things get real. They don't ghost when emotions get complicated. They don't vanish when you need them to show up. They don't run when you ask for consistency. The right person stays, communicates, works through difficulty because they understand that real love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone willing to grow, someone willing to stay, someone willing to choose you even when choosing you is hard. Stop calling it rejection. Call it what it is. Emotional immaturity. Call it avoidance. Call it emotional abuse disguised as self-protection. Call it someone who hasn't learned that the best things in life require you to stay present. Even when your nervous system is screaming at you to run, even when your past is telling you to protect yourself by leaving. You don't need to be chosen by someone who can't choose themselves. You don't need approval from someone who disappears when approval becomes mutual. You don't need love from someone who hasn't learned to love consistently, honestly, courageously, without running when it gets real. Their disappearance was not your failure. It was their surrender to fear. It was their capitulation to the voices in their head that told them love is dangerous, that staying is stupid, that vulnerability is weakness. And now you get to choose differently. You get to choose people who communicate instead of vanish. People who work through discomfort instead of avoiding it like the plague. People who understand that real connection isn't about finding someone who never triggers your fears. It's about finding someone willing to talk through them, work through them, grow through them together. The person meant for you doesn't ghost. They show up, they stay. They choose the hard conversation over the easy exit. They choose honesty over comfort. They choose you over their fear. They choose growth over safety. They choose love over control. Stop mourning someone who couldn't handle your reality. Start celebrating the fact that you can handle your own. Stop grieving someone who chose control over connection. Start honoring yourself for choosing love over safety, for choosing presence over protection, for choosing to stay even when staying hurt. You are not too much. You were never too much. You were just too real for someone who spent their life being fake, too authentic for someone who's perfected the art of pretending, too present for someone who's mastered the skill of disappearing. Their loss, your liberation.